A week of rain bearing down on San Diego, the groups who are helping people find shelter from a series of storms, and what you need to know about the next round of wet weather.
If the federal government decides to use force, will you respond with force as well?
That would have to be determined at that time. I would not be able to report on that.
Are you prepared to?
Absolutely.
Standing their ground, the fight over land heating up in the Pacific Northwest. Stick a fork in it. The Chargers season is done for now. The team leader who avoided a shakeup, and the new price for any NFL who wants to move to a new home. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Amitha Sharma. Emergency homeless shelters across the county this week plan to open their doors to accommodate more people during the storms. Still, hundreds will likely have to endure the cold, wet conditions on the streets. The nonprofit Alpha Project has been working around the clock ahead of the storms to help those whose lives could be at risk. This morning, the outreach team was scouring canyons and riverbeds in Mission Valley and distributing plastic sheets and rain gear to the vulnerable population. That's where they met Mac. The homeless man didn't want to give his last name, but says he plans to ride out the potentially severe weather under a bridge with 8 other homeless seniors.
It is cold, but we are fortunate enough to have the bridge over us to keep us dry and a little warmer as opposed to the people out there. And that's what we're afraid of, is having to go back out there and not have a place to go to.
Alpha Project Supervisor Brandon Smith says he'll be out every day this week working to keep people insulated and warm. He encourages others to help.
We're collecting ponchos, rain jackets, sweaters, sweatpants, tarps, tents, sleeping bags.
Donations can be brought to the Alpha Project headquarters in Hillcrest. For more information, go to kpbs.org. This is round one of a series of storms sweeping into San Diego. We're not expecting much of a break from the rain this week. Stephanie Olmo is tracking the system in tonight's KPBS weather report.
Unsettled weather continuing throughout the rest of this week. Taking a look here at the satellite and radar. Here it goes. We're talking more wet weather, northern central portions of California, the higher elevations. We are looking at some snow in the Sierra Nevada. So good news for the skiers, and also good news for the Golden State. As many know, we are under a severe drought, but unfortunately, heavy bands of rain, that's going to cause for major flood problems and also mudslides. Right now, we do have that storm system here in southern Arizona. More storms are expected to impact the southwest region as we continue throughout the week. The next one approaching this area as we head into late Tuesday morning and as we drag throughout the day on Tuesday. And then the third one on Wednesday. So really not catching a break this week. I do also advise you that we do have a high surf advisory in place all the way throughout the week, and it's going to remain in effect until 10 p.m. local time on Friday. So we have to watch out for large waves along the coast. Scattered showers are expected to continue tonight. Rainfall total amounts, we already received 1/3 of an inch in some areas. Once again, we're expecting these totals to climb as we head into tonight, all due to the scattered showers and heavier bands of rain in store, even as we head into the day on Tuesday, Wednesday as well. So around the coast, we're expecting all the way to Thursday night, anywhere from 3 inches of rain. Meanwhile, the mountains could average between 5 to 8 inches of rain. Your overnight lows for tonight, Barrigo Springs dropping down to 44 degrees, partly cloudy skies. A couple of showers still lingering around some areas. Ramona dropping back to just around 49 degrees. Very stormy here on Tuesday. Like I mentioned before, that next storm system blasting through the area. Heavy snowfall above 7,000 feet to localized flash flooding. Of course, travel delays. Many folks are heading out in the roadway, so we have to watch out there. Make sure to check your headlights and also your wiper blades. Make sure they're in good, proper use. Also, your tires. We want to make sure you slow down when we have conditions like this. Heavy rain throughout much of California. Meanwhile, across the interior sections, looking at some snow impacting the Sierra Nevada and also Nevada. So once again, good news for those skiers. Gusty winds an issue as well. We take you here throughout the morning hours here on Tuesday. Borrego Springs expected to be just around 52 degrees, 47 in Ramona, 56 around San Diego. And then as we progress throughout the afternoon hours, temperatures are expected to climb. San Diego, we could make it into the upper 50s, low 60s. We take a look here at your 5-day outlook for the coast for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Pretty much very unsettled. Once again, be careful out there. Afternoon rain. Once again, it could be very heavy at times. Temperatures expected to drop a bit as we head into your day on Thursday. Taking a look at your extended forecast further inland. Once again, very unsettled throughout much of the week, even as we head into the weekend as well. Temperatures remaining in the low 60s. Your 5-day outlook for the mountains. Some areas looking at some snow, that's for sure, throughout the afternoon hours on Wednesday. That continues on Thursday. And your extended outlook for the desert, pretty cloudy and rainy for the next couple of days, looking a whole lot better as we head into Saturday. Stephanie Omo, KPBS News.
And homeowners in flood-prone areas are being warned to be prepared with the big storm rolling in, and county authorities are handing out free sandbags. Fire stations are the place to go in San Diego. San Diego firefighter Dustin Slicker. He says it is a very simple thing that can help save your home.
There's a lot of flooding that happens everywhere. People's homes get damaged. So to kind of prevent that, and from us coming in there and getting the water out, to be proactive, kind of implemented the sandbag system. It's just a plastic bag. Pretty much you fill it up with sand.
In Pacific Beach, Fire Station 21 is handing out free sandbags, 10 at a time, and telling people to fill up at the beach. Our coverage on the week of rain continues on air on KPBS Radio and online at kpbs.org. The year got off to a rough start on Wall Street as stocks plunged today in a global sell-off triggered by new fears of a slowdown in China and rising tensions in the Middle East. The Dow Jones Industrial Average clawed back from a steep early decline, but ended the day down 276 points or 1.6%. Markets in Asia and Europe suffered heavier losses, with China's main index plunging nearly 7%. The Standard & Poor's 500 index fell 1.5%, and the Nasdaq Composite lost 2.1%. Monday morning, quarterbacks calling for action today after several teams failed to make the playoffs. Several NFL teams responded, handing out pink slips to their head coaches. The exception to all this are the San Diego Chargers.
We're moving on to 2016, and no one was happy here in the organization with the way the season obviously went, but Tom, John, and myself are excited moving forward, and we got a lot of work ahead of us.
Head coach Mike McCoy got the news that he will keep his job for the next season. This comes one day after the Chargers lost to the Denver Broncos. The game marked a dismal ending to the season for the Chargers with a 4-12 record. In a written statement, team president John Spano says he had the utmost confidence in the team's leadership. He says they are evaluating every aspect of the team to put a winning product back on the field, and they will not waste any time making the necessary changes. Any day now, the Chargers are expected to officially file for relocation. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen has an update on the team's Los Angeles ambitions.
Of course, the Chargers aren't the only ones asking to move to LA. The Oakland Raiders and the St. Louis Rams are also fighting for a piece of the LA market. Any team that's approved for relocation would have to pay the NFL a fee of $550 million. That's more than a third of the Chargers' estimated total value of $1.5 billion. Former NFL and Chargers executive Jim Steeg said that's a lot of cash even for a pro football team.
I think there's always hope until that point in time. There is no more hope. This is a decision, again, by 32 individuals.
The Chargers need 24 of the 32 team owners to approve their relocation. That vote is expected to take place next week. And insiders say there's still no team with that three-quarters supermajority behind it. The Chargers came in third to last in the NFL standings, far behind the Raiders and the Rams. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
President Obama defended his plan today to move forward on gun control restrictions by executive order. The president met with his attorney general, FBI chief, and other officials who advised him on options he can take without congressional approval.
These are not only recommendations that are well within my legal authority and the executive branch, but they're also ones that the overwhelming majority of the American people, including gun owners, support and believe in.
The White House says new gun control measures will be announced tomorrow. Obama tried the legislative route in 2013, pushing for regulations that included expanded background checks, but that effort failed in Congress. Two ranchers at the center of an armed anti-government protest in Oregon turned themselves in as planned to a California prison today. Protesters are now speaking out. Associated Press reporter Sandy Kozel has more on what they are prepared to do.
A group of militia members are standing their ground after seizing control of a federal facility in a remote area of eastern Oregon. The armed protesters took over the headquarters of the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge on Saturday.
These people are wearing fatigues and openly carrying rifles and stuff like that.
Protesters admit they're ready for a fight.
If the federal government decides to use force, will you respond with force as well?
That would have to be determined at that time. I would not be able to report on that.
Are you prepared to?
Absolutely.
The protesters say they're supporting two local ranchers, Dwight and Stephen Hammond. The Hammonds recently served time in prison for arson. They claimed they set fires that burned on federal land to protect their own land from wildfires. A judge ordered the Hammonds back to prison, saying federal guidelines mandated longer sentences. The protesters say it's all part of a long-running land dispute between the Hammonds and the government.
The ranch is adjacent to the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge and to have private property up on the Steen Mountains. They have refused for nearly 40 years to sell their ranch. And there have been very vindictive behaviors because they refuse. There have been intimidations, and the list goes on.
Sandy Kozel, The Associated Press.
At a news conference today, the Harney County Sheriff asked activists to leave the area, saying the Hammonds have turned themselves in. It's time to go home. In a statement, the FBI said it's monitoring the situation and it is working with local and state authorities to bring a peaceful resolution to the situation. As workers return to work for the first time since 14 people were killed last month in a terror attack in San Bernardino, a memorial to the victims continues to grow. Flags, flowers, and tributes to the victims have been placed along the fence that was erected to protect the returning workers. Security guards have been stationed at gates to check IDs. Officials say the fence will remain in place indefinitely. The San Diego City Council has a big decision to make when it returns from holiday break this month. Up high on the agenda is whether to appeal a state labor board's ruling last month that undercuts a 2012 citizen-approved pension reform plan. The Public Employment Relations Board said the reform plan was flawed, and now it wants the city to retroactively cover pensions for 2,000 workers. San Diego City Councilman Chris Cate wants his colleagues to appeal the ruling.
You have a measure that was put on the ballot by 116,000 signatures from voters within the city of San Diego, approved by nearly two-thirds of the voters in that 2012 election. I think the will of the people is to see full implementation.
But Michael Zucchett, general manager of the San Diego Municipal Employees Association, says an appeal is a risky financial move.
It's a big bill now, and it's only going to keep getting bigger if this decision stands.
The City Council is due back at work next week. A new California law requires hospitals to fully inform a family caregiver when a patient is discharged. From our North County Bureau, KPBS health reporter Kenny Goldberg tells us supporters say the law could prevent readmissions and help reduce costs.
The transition between hospital and home can be critical for patients. The new law requires hospitals to identify a family caregiver and give them information on a patient's needs and medications upon discharge. Dr. Davis Craycroft is a medical director at Scripps Mercy Hospital. He says patients often just don't understand their discharge instructions.
The whole hospitalization process is traumatic. Even the most intelligent, the most astute patient may not be in a state of mind to absorb all of the information that's kind of coming at them in a shotgun fashion.
Craycroft says the law requiring caregivers to be included in the discharge process is long overdue. California is the 18th state to pass such a law in the last 2 years. Kenny Goldberg, KPBS News.
Voters will have a chance to weigh in on corporate donations in political campaigns. This after the California Supreme Court upheld the legality of a ballot measure. It wants to know what voters think about the 2010 Citizens United ruling. This is also a non-binding measure. The 2010 ruling from the highest court in the land gave corporations and labor unions the right to spend money on federal political causes. Volkswagen has been served and faces billions of dollars in penalties for their emissions cheating scandal. The U.S. Justice Department filed a lawsuit today against the German automaker after emissions cheating software was found in nearly 600,000 vehicles sold in the U.S. The result was greenhouse gas emissions at up to 40 times federal environmental limits. On the science desk, why did the elephant seal try to cross the road? Maybe to find a nice spot to have her pup. Officials say the elephant seal, who caused a traffic jam last week in Northern California, gave birth to a healthy pup yesterday in Point Reyes National Seashore. The California Highway Patrol teamed up with marine mammals experts to rescue the mother last week. This was after she repeatedly tried to cross the highway. Among the hundreds of new California laws that went into effect this month, one legislation may put sustainable agriculture at risk. The new law only allows farmers and gardeners to share their seeds with other growers within a 3-mile radius of their farm. Now, farmers must follow labeling and packaging regulations to trade beyond that perimeter. Experts say trading seeds is necessary to keep crops diverse, healthy, and inexpensive. Critics say the new law favors the expansion of GMOs. Taking a closer look at the largest fish farm in America, a nonprofit partially funded by SeaWorld is planning to correct what it calls this country's seafood imbalance. Earlier this year, KPBS reporter Claire Tregerser showed us what's cooking off San Diego's coast.
Don Kent is peering into a water tank about the size of a backyard swimming pool. He's waiting for his fish.
There's some big guys in there. Here they come.
A school of 10 yellowtail swim by, each about 4 feet long.
That's a big fish right there.
Kent heads the Hub SeaWorld Research Institute. He's leading us through the lab where his scientists are breeding fish. I ask if he has names for them.
I try not to name things I intend to eat. So
Kent won't be eating these fish, but he hopes we'll all be chowing down on their offspring in a few years. Hub SeaWorld is partnering with a private investment firm to create the Rose Canyon Fisheries Aquaculture Project. There are already fish farms in the United States, but this one will be near San Diego's popular beaches and will be the largest yet. At its largest, the proposed farm would be 48 cages divided into 2 grids. The grids will cover about 1/5 of a square mile, the same size as the parking lot around Qualcomm Stadium. Anchor lines will run from the cages to the bottom of the ocean. Those lines extend out, so the whole project will cover about 1.3 square miles, the same size as Balboa Park without the Naval Center. The cages could have poles that extend 16 feet above the water, but Kent says we won't see them from the shore. He has computer modeling that shows the cages won't look like this, but like this, because they'll be below the horizon. To test that out, I did some trigonometry. My calculations showed if you're lying on the ground at the ocean's edge, you'd see the top third of a 16-foot pole. If you're standing up, you can see more. Environmental group San Diego Coastkeeper is concerned about the scale of the project, not just how it will look, but how it will impact the marine environment. More on that tomorrow. They took out their boat to where the project would go and held up a pole. I went to Sunset Cliffs and looked for it.
They're just a really small dot out there. So if you were walking by, I'm not sure that you would necessarily notice.
Whether it's visible or not, Kent is betting the U.S. needs his project. That's because 91% of its seafood is imported, and countries like China that produce a lot of fish are now keeping more for themselves.
So the price of seafood is going up higher and higher for people like us that have to import it. So the big advantage we have over those other supplies is from the fact that we can grow it locally.
The U.S. already does produce some seafood and doesn't eat it. That's because Americans don't always like the fish native to our coasts, so we import from other countries, according to food journalist Paul Greenberg. His book, American Catch, describes a seafood swap.
We tend to export stronger tasting things like mackerel, black cod, a lot of squid, and then we import sort of neutral tasting things like shrimp, also tilapia, and these are both very, very neutral tasting things that you can kind of deep fry and use in a, sort of the American palate friendly, sandwich.
He says aquaculture can help correct this imbalance, but
rather than trying to kind of start up, new and complicated ventures, it'd be first off, let's try and eat the fish that we've already got.
But aquaculture solves more global problems than Americans not liking fishy fish, according to Don Kent with Hub SeaWorld.
There's 7 billion people on Earth now, and there's going to be 9 billion people in your lifetime, very, very soon. How are we going to feed those extra 2 billion people?
Kent says one way to do that is through aquaculture. Claire Tregesser, KPBS News.
Even if you've never played a video game in your life, video game design and gamification are still shaping our lives. Americans spend over $20 billion a year on video games, but there's a lot more to the influence of gaming culture than you might expect. Sasha Ann Simons found a one-stop shop in Buffalo that takes the obsession with gaming to another level in this Innovation Trail report.
Next Monday night, we are running the BGS Music Meetup. That is a meetup much like this one, but it's specifically for game music.
I just wanted to find something where I could fit in and belong, and I found them online, showed up one day, and never stopped coming again.
Video game designer Joe Wilson almost never misses a Thursday night at Buffalo Game Space. It's where he and nearly 30 people get together for a game developer meetup.
Next, we are officially announcing in about a month, BGS Jam 5 is going down.
An organizer runs through some quick announcements before they begin. Buffalo Game Space is a place for anyone to make video games. You can take your pick at classes, use the space to create, and just bounce your unfinished work off other game gurus.
Like right now I'm working on a project called Utheros, which is an MMORPG. It's a massive, massive title like World of Warcraft. And my job is to design the cities. So the starting cities and the environment itself.
PJ Muscal heads the workshops at Buffalo Game Space. He just put together the latest game jam.
48 hours, usually hackathons for game development. And that's a chance for our members to test their skills and also come up with new interesting ideas.
With so many people playing video games, it's no wonder that psychologists are studying what makes them so compelling. And gamification is a buzzword that you might have heard or read in the last few years. It's been working wonders in the workplace and schools. Customer relations and classroom lessons are becoming more and more gamified. In the simplest terms, gamification happens when you introduce a game-like environment to help drive certain behaviors.
That's another thing that I'm personally interested in is serious games.
How would you explore that?
So games for learning, games for training, games for education, games for health, games even for social change.
Gamification has taken over our lives, and it all came from video games. Stop by the Strong's International Center for the History of Electronic Games, and you'll find more than 55,000 items in their collection. The most important arcade games of all time, and every major video game platform that ever existed. John Paul Dyson is the director of this center. He says that despite the obsession, there's still a feeling out there that video games do more bad than good.
Video games have been part of this long story, going from the novel to movies to television to comic books, in which people have feared this thing and then eventually they've accepted it and then embraced it. And the key determinant there in making this change is just simple familiarity and generational turnover.
Granted, gamification techniques do get people to change their behavior, but instead of focusing on the rewards, Dyson says motivation is the key.
Find ways that the gaming mechanism can act in accordance with people's own intrinsic motivations. If you're trying to force people, get someone to do something that they don't want to do, just for using a game, it's probably not going to work, or game elements. It's not going to work.
Buffalo Game Space is always trying to level up. Moscow says he'd like the group to focus future efforts on diversifying the roster of developers in the region.
We have a huge, for example, refugee community in Buffalo. Immigrants. I'm an immigrant myself. And it would be really great to reach out to these communities because there's a lot of potential there.
And so far, members like Joe Wilson can't get enough of the space. I mean, where else can they go to freely submerge in video games all day long, no questions asked?
I fell in love with the space, and I've been trying to do everything I can to support them.
For the Innovation Trail, I'm Sasha Ann Simons.
This Innovation Trail report was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. You can find more on tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us and have a great evening.